The 4 million Korean won's Louboutin shopping bag hit Ariam's ribs before he even saw it coming. He crashed into the crystal ornament display, glass shattering around him as he hit the marble floor, his turtleneck tearing, his shoulder splitting open against the metal frame. For a moment, the entire Gangnam luxury mall went silent, every alpha, beta, and omega frozen as the sharp scent of an omega's pain flooded the winter air. Ariam looked up from the floor, blood trickling down his arm, at the alpha standing over him with contempt twisting his features. Minute Gayam Wellington Park. His ex-fiancée. The alpha who'd stolen everything from him 3 years ago and disappeared like smoke. Stay down where you belong, you defective little parasite, Minute Gayam snarled, his expensive cologne, bought with Ariam's money, overwhelming every sensitive omega nose within 15 feet. You should have stayed in whatever gutter you crawled out of. He had no idea who Ariam was anymore. No idea that the poor, abandoned omega he remembered, the one who'd begged him not to leave, who'd cried alone in a charity hospital bed, who'd lost their baby from starvation and stress, who'd been found bleeding in an alley with 143 Korean wons to his name, was gone. No idea that Ariam had risen from those ashes. No idea about the bonding mark hidden under that torn turtleneck, placed there by the most feared alpha in Seoul. No idea about the penthouse in Gangnam-gu he'd left that morning, with its temperature-controlled nest room and bulletproof windows. No idea about the 15 million Korean won's watch on his wrist or the black card in his wallet that had no spending limit. No idea about the custom-tailored plain clothes that cost more than Minute Gayam's entire designer wardrobe. And Minute Gayam definitely had no idea about the man whose scent was now permanently mixed with Ariam's, the man whose security team had already been alerted, the man whose phone was ringing in Ariam's pocket right now with an automated alert. Bonded mate, distress detected. Jang Suk-hyun. His husband. His bonded alpha. Seoul's most dangerous underground king. The man they called the Sovereign. As Ariam's trembling, glass-cut fingers pulled out his phone and accepted the call, as that deadly calm voice asked in a tone that promised violence, "Jagaya, are you hurt?" He watched realization start to creep across Minute Gayam's face. The way the other alphas in the mall had gone completely still, their instincts screaming danger. The way the mall manager was suddenly sprinting toward them, face pale with terror. The way Minute Gayam's new fiancée, Yuna, had taken 3 steps back, her omega instincts recognizing a predator's claim. He just kicked the wrong omega. And in approximately 12 minutes, when Suk-hyun's convoy of black vehicles screeched into this mall's underground garage, when 12 security guards in tailored suits fanned out across the luxury corridor, when the alpha whose bonding mark was bleeding on Ariam's neck arrived to find his mate bruised and bleeding, Minute Gayam Wellington Park was going to learn a lesson about consequences that would destroy his entire world. His career. His reputation. His freedom. His life as he knew it. But he still didn't know it yet. Right now, in this moment, standing over Ariam with his stolen money shoes and his stolen money clothes and his lies about fake pregnancies still on his tongue, he still thought Ariam was nothing. Still thought he was that desperate, worthless omega who'd let himself be used and discarded. That was about to change. Before we dive deeper into this story of protective love, brutal justice, and reclaimed dignity, I want to wish you all a blessed and magical Christmas season. May your holidays be filled with warmth, love, and beautiful moments with those who matter most to you. Now, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of this journey. Your support means everything. Now, let's get into this dramatic story of an omega who refused to stay broken, and the alpha who would burn the world down to keep him safe. The morning had started so differently. Ariam had woken wrapped in warmth, both from the temperature-controlled silk sheets and from the solid presence of Suk-hyun's body curved protectively around his. The alpha's face was buried in Ariam's neck, lips pressed against the bonding mark even in sleep, a low rumble of contentment vibrating through his chest. This was Ariam's favorite moment of every day. The quiet before Seoul woke up. Before Suk-hyun became the sovereign again, making decisions that moved millions of won and occasionally, removed problems. Before Ariam had to face a world that still sometimes looked at him and saw unclaimed Omega, despite the very obvious mark on his throat. Right now, they were just Sukyun and Ariam. Alpha and Omega. Bonded mates. Husbands. The word still felt surreal sometimes, even after 8 months of marriage. 8 months since Sukyun had found him in that alley, since the hospital, since Ariam had woken from his fever and sedation to find a stranger's terrifyingly beautiful face watching over him with an intensity that should have scared him but instead made him feel safe for the first time in 3 years. "You're thinking too loud," Sukyun murmured against his neck, voice rough with sleep. "I can smell it. Jasmine and rain. You're sad." Ariam's scent always gave him away. Another Omega weakness that Minute Gaim had mocked him for. The inability to fully suppress his emotional scent even with the expensive blockers. But Sukyun never mocked. Sukyun had learned to read his scent the way other people read faces, and he treasured it. Called it getting to know you from the inside out. "Not sad," Ariam corrected softly, threading his fingers through Sukyun's dark hair. "Just grateful. And a little scared that I'll wake up and this will all be a dream." The Alpha's arms tightened around him immediately, possessively. "Never going to happen. You're mine, Ariam. Legally. Biologically. Permanently. Nothing and no one is taking you from me." It was intense. It should probably feel suffocating. But to Ariam, who'd been abandoned, discarded, left to die, it felt like home. The rest of the morning unfolded with the precise choreography they developed over months. Sukyun insisted on making breakfast himself. He didn't trust anyone else with Ariam's food, a paranoia Ariam had learned not to argue with. Ariam picked at his omelette while Sukyun watched with hawk-like attention, only relaxing when Ariam finished the entire plate plus the fruit. "You're eating better," Sukyun observed, something fierce and proud in his dark eyes. "You've gained 3 kilograms since last month." Ariam flushed. In his old life, an alpha commenting on his weight would have sent him into a spiral of shame. But Sukyun said it like an accomplishment, because to him, it was. Every kilogram Ariam gained was a victory over the past that had tried to starve him to death. "I have a good provider," Ariam said quietly, and watched Sukyun's alpha pride bloom in his scent, pine and smoke in satisfaction. After breakfast came the part Ariam dreaded, Sukyun's daily security briefing. Jae-sung, the head of security, arrived precisely at 8 a.m. with updates, schedules, and threat assessments. This morning, he gave Ariam a respectful nod before launching into his report. "The meeting with the Japanese delegation is confirmed for 2 p.m., sir. They've requested the Myeongdong location. We'll have 8 men inside, another 12 in position around the building. The park situation has been resolved." Ariam had learned not to ask what resolved meant. "And Mrs. Jang has a scheduled shopping trip to Gangnam Luxury Mall at 11 a.m. Sukyun's jaw tightened. "Cancel it." "Hyung," Ariam protested, exasperation creeping into his voice. They'd had this argument before. Many times. "I'm just going Christmas shopping. It's a public mall. I'll take the security team." "The security team that you've convinced to trail you from 50 meters back, you mean?" Sukyun's eyes narrowed. "The ones you've trained to be discreet so people don't stare?" Ariam bit his lip, guilty as charged. I want to feel normal sometimes. Just for an hour. I'm not going to run away, I promise. I'm not going to get kidnapped. I just want to buy you a Christmas present without your guards reporting everything I look at." The battle played out across Sukyun's face, alpha protective instincts versus his desperate need to give Ariam whatever he asked for. It was always fascinating to watch how completely this powerful, dangerous man melted for him. "Fine," Sukyun finally ground out. "But you take the phone I gave you. You keep it on. If I call, you answer within 2 rings. And if you feel anything, any discomfort, any weird instinct, anything at all, you call me immediately. I don't care if I'm meeting with the president himself. You'll drop everything and come running, I know," Ariam finished, smiling despite himself. You've told me. Because I mean it. Sukyun pulled him close, scenting him deeply, marking him with his own pine and smoke scent that would cling to Aryam's skin and hair for hours. Every alpha in that mall would smell the claim and keep their distance. Or so they both thought. Before Aryam left, Sukyun pressed his lips to the bonding mark on Aryam's neck, not biting, just a tender, possessive kiss that made Aryam's knees weak. I love you, the alpha murmured against his skin. More than money. More than power. More than my own life. You're my everything, Aryam. Come home safe. Aryam left the penthouse wearing his plainest clothes, a soft turtleneck, fitted jeans, and a simple coat. The 15 million Korean won's watch stayed on his wrist, Sukyun's compromise for letting him go, and the black card went in his wallet. He'd chosen the turtleneck specifically to hide his bonding mark. Old habit. From a time when being unmated meant being vulnerable. When showing any sign of an alpha's claim meant becoming a target. He should have left it visible. He should have let every person in that mall see exactly who he belonged to. But hindsight, as they say, is perfect. And by the time Aryam realized his mistake, he was already lying on the floor surrounded by shattered crystal, Minute-Gayam's shoe print bruising his ribs, and his alpha's fury racing toward him at 150 kilometers per hour. The Gangnam luxury mall sparkled like a snow globe come to life. Crystal chandeliers dripped from vaulted ceilings, their light catching on 10-meter Christmas trees wrapped in gold ribbon and white roses. Piano music drifted through the marble corridors where designer boutiques displayed their holiday collections behind windows frosted with artificial snow. It should have been beautiful. Magical, even. Instead, Aryam felt like he was walking through a minefield of memories. He'd been searching for over an hour, drifting between Cartier and Bulgari, Hermes and Tom Ford, trying to find something, anything, that would make an appropriate gift for a man who could buy the entire mall with a phone call. What did you get the alpha who owned half of Seoul's underground economy? Who'd given Aryam everything without ever asking for anything in return except his presence, his trust, his heart? The question felt impossible. So Aryam kept walking, kept looking, kept hoping inspiration would strike. That's when he passed the children's boutique. The window display featured a tiny Omega mannequin in a velvet dress, belly rounded with obvious pregnancy, standing beside an alpha mannequin in a tailored suit. Between them, a nursery setup, white crib, stuffed animals, silver mobile with moons and stars. The perfect picture of Alpha Omega domesticity. Aryam stopped walking. Stopped breathing. 3 years ago. The bathroom of their cramped apartment. 2 pink lines appearing like a verdict. Minute-Gayam? I need to show you something. His hands had been shaking so badly he could barely hold the test. Omegas could get pregnant, it was biology, but actually succeeding? That was supposed to be rare, precious, near miraculous for someone with Aryam's questionable genetics. His family's words, spat at him the day they disowned him for presenting Omega instead of Beta. Minute-Gayam had stared at those pink lines for a full minute. Then he'd smiled, not the smile Aryam had hoped for, but he'd smiled, and said, Okay, we'll make it work. I'll take extra shifts, you'll rest more. We'll figure it out. Aryam had cried from relief. Had actually believed they'd be okay. He'd been so incredibly, devastatingly stupid. A pregnant Omega walked past, her alpha's hand protective on her lower back, both of them laughing at something on her phone. The Omega's scent was sweet with contentment, vanilla and honey, the scent of a happy, safe pregnancy. Aryam's stomach twisted. His own scent soured before he could stop it, suppressants failing against the tidal wave of memory. Waking up to silence. The apartment too quiet, too empty. Minute-Gayam's clothes gone from the closet. His toothbrush missing. The dresser drawers hanging open, ransacked. Running to check his wallet. His bank account. His grandmother's inheritance that was supposed to last them through the pregnancy and beyond. Gone. All 50 million Korean wons. Gone. The note on the kitchen counter, Minute-Gayam's handwriting sharp and careless. An Omega like you was never going to give me a proper heir anyway. Don't try to find me. Calling his phone. Blocked. His work. Mr. Park resigned yesterday, didn't he tell you? His friends. Sorry, Minute-Gayam said you two broke up. I can't get involved. 2 months pregnant and suddenly, completely alone. Aryam forced himself to keep walking, to move past the boutique, past the happy families and the twinkling lights and the cheerful carols that made his chest ache. His security team was somewhere behind him, far enough back that he felt independent, close enough that their scents, Both beaters, carefully chosen to not trigger his alpha-related trauma, occasionally drifted past as reassurance. He turned into the Gucci store, desperate for distraction. Maybe a wallet? A belt? Something small and meaningful that wouldn't make Sukyun argue about spending money on him. The scent hit him like a fist. Designer cologne. Tom Ford Noir. The same scent that used to cling to their sheets, that he'd once found comforting, that now made his hindbrain scream danger danger run. Ariam's head snapped up. Across the corridor, near the Prada boutique, stood an alpha who'd haunted his nightmares for 3 years. Taller than Ariam remembered, or maybe Ariam had just been so broken back then that everyone seemed massive. Minute Gayam wore a charcoal suit that probably cost 5 million Korean wons, his hair styled perfectly, his watch catching the light as he gestured while talking. On his arm, a female Omega absolutely dripping in diamonds. Her dress was Valentino. Her shoes were Louboutin. The engagement ring on her finger could probably fund a small country. All of it, bought with Ariam's inheritance. With his grandmother's love, stolen and converted into Minute Gayam's new life. Ariam's hands started shaking. His suppressants failed completely, his scent flooding with fear rain and distress frost, the smell of an Omega in crisis. Every alpha within 15 meters turned their heads, instincts prickling. Including Minute Gayam. Their eyes met across the marble corridor. Recognition flashed in Minute Gayam's gaze, followed immediately by contempt, by disgust, by that familiar look that said you're nothing, you were always nothing, how dare you still exist in my world. Ariam turned to leave. Tried to leave. Tried to disappear before this could become something worse. But Minute Gayam's predatory alpha instincts had already locked on. And Ariam, carrying the scent of distress, looking small and afraid and alone, had just become prey. Ariam managed 3 steps before Minute Gayam's voice cut through the holiday music like a blade. Wait, is that? No. It can't be. The tone was performative, loud enough to carry across the corridor. Loud enough to make other shoppers pause and turn. Ariam's spine stiffened, every instinct screaming at him to run, but his legs had locked up, his body frozen in that terrible space between fight and flight. Minute Gayam's footsteps approached, Italian leather on marble, the sound of money and confidence. The cologne intensified, making Ariam's sensitive Omega nose burn. Oh my god, Ariam? Is that actually you? Minute Gayam's voice dripped with false surprise, false delight. I almost didn't recognize you without all the desperation. The tears. The begging. He laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. Still shopping at places you can't afford, I see? Old habits die hard. Ariam turned slowly, forcing himself to meet those familiar eyes, eyes that used to look at him with something resembling affection, that now held only contempt. Minute Gayam stood with his fiancée tucked against his side like a trophy, both of them dressed in enough designer labels to feed a family for a year. I was just leaving, Ariam managed, his voice coming out smaller than he wanted. Quieter. Weaker. He hated how easily he fell back into that role, the diminished Omega, the one who apologized for existing. Oh, don't leave on our account, Yuna purred, her perfectly manicured nails, painted Christmas red, drumming against Minute Gayam's arm. Her eyes raked over Ariam's outfit with obvious disdain. Though I have to ask, sweetie, are those clothes from a thrift store? I mean, I know times must be hard for you, but there are charities that help Omegas in need. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so devastating. Ariam's plain turtleneck was custom cashmere from a private atelier in Qingdam-dong, 800000. His jeans were Tom Ford, 1.2 million. His coat was Loro Piana, 3 million. The watch on his wrist cost more than the engagement ring currently glittering on Yuna's finger. But he looked poor to them because he'd chosen simple. Because luxury, to Ariam, had stopped being about labels and started being about quality, about comfort, about not needing to prove anything to anyone. They couldn't see that. They only saw what they wanted to see, a broken Omega who never recovered. A crowd was forming now, curious shoppers pretending to browse while obviously watching the drama unfold. Minute Gayam noticed, and Ariam watched something predatory slide across his expression. An audience. A chance to rewrite history in real time. You know, Yuna, I never told you about Arium, Minute Gaim announced, projecting his voice like an actor on stage. My ex. The obsessive little Omega who tried to trap me with a fake pregnancy 3 years ago. Arium's breath caught. It wasn't. Oh, it absolutely was, Minute Gaim continued, speaking over him effortlessly, his alpha voice carrying authority that made other Omegas in the crowd instinctively defer. Showed me a positive test, cried about how scared he was, made me promise to stay. Then conveniently miscarried a few weeks later when I started asking for doctor's appointments and ultrasounds. That's not what happened, Arium said, but his voice was shaking now, his scent betraying his distress, rain and frost and fear. You left. You stole my money and you left me. Left you? Minute Gaim laughed, and several people in the crowd chuckled with him. I escaped. From a manipulative, gold-digging Omega who thought a fake baby would guarantee him a meal ticket for life. He turned to Yuna, voice softening with false tenderness. Baby, I'm sorry you have to see this. My past isn't pretty, but I learned from it. I learned to recognize red flags. Arium tried to walk away. Tried to leave before this became worse, before the humiliation crushed him completely. His security team was moving closer now. He could see them through the crowd, their expressions tense, clearly torn between intervening and following their orders to stay discreet. He managed 2 steps before Minute Gaim's hand clamped around his wrist. The grip was bruising, painful, alpha strength applied without mercy. Arium gasped, tried to pull away, but Minute Gaim held firm, yanking him back like a misbehaving dog. Don't walk away from me, Minute Gaim snarled, all pretense of civility dropped. You don't get to walk away. Not after what you put me through. Not after you tried to ruin my life. Sir, I need you to let him go. A mall security guard appeared, young and nervous, clearly uncomfortable confronting an alpha in full aggressive display. Sir, please. Minute Gaim shoved Arium hard. Later, Arium would remember the feeling of weightlessness, the moment his feet left the ground. The crystal ornament display rushing toward him, 10 meters of carefully arranged glass decorations on a tiered metal stand. The sound of his own sharp cry. The tearing of fabric. The first impact, shoulder hitting metal, glass exploding around him. And then Minute Gaim's expensive shoe, Ferragamo, 2 million Korean wons, bought with stolen inheritance, connecting with his ribs. The pain was white-hot, stealing his breath. Arium hit the ground amid a cascade of shattered crystal, blood blooming through his torn turtleneck, his bonding mark finally visible to everyone as the fabric ripped away. The entire floor went silent. No music. No conversation. Just the tinkling sound of glass still settling, and Arium's ragged breathing, and the collective held breath of 50 witnesses who just watched an alpha assault a bonded Omega in public. In Arium's pocket, his phone began to ring. The convoy arrived like an invading army. 12 black vehicles, Maybachs and armored SUVs, screeched into the underground parking garage in perfect formation, their movements so synchronized they seemed choreographed. The sound echoed through the concrete structure like thunder, making security guards freeze mid-step and valets abandon their posts. By the time the vehicle stopped, the mall surveillance team had already alerted upper management. He's here. The owner is here. Sukyun exited the center vehicle before it fully stopped, his security team flowing out behind him like a dark tide. 12 men in identical black suits and A-pieces, each one carrying themselves with the disciplined precision of former military, each one legally armed and absolutely loyal. They moved through the VIP entrance with purpose. No running, running suggested panic, and Jang Sukyun did not panic. But every step radiated lethal intent, every movement promised violence barely leashed. The mall manager met them in the service corridor, face sheet white, hands shaking as he bowed deeply. Mr. Jang, sir, I apologize profusely for this incident. We've secured the individual responsible, the paramedics are with Mr. Ariam, and we've locked down security footage. Where is he? Sukyun's voice was dead calm. Flat. The kind of calm that preceded executions. 3rd floor, luxury corridor, sir. The paramedics. Sukyun was already moving. The elevator ride up felt like drowning. His alpha instincts were screaming, tearing at his self-control like rabid animals. The distress alert had come through 15 minutes ago. 15 minutes of his mate being hurt, being scared, being in pain while Sukyun was across the city in a pointless meeting about import tariffs. 15 minutes too long. The elevator doors opened to chaos barely contained. Mall security had cordoned off the area with velvet ropes, but shoppers crowded at the barriers, phones out, whispering. The crystal ornament display was destroyed, glass glittering across marble like scattered diamonds. Blood smeared the metal frame. Ariam's blood. Sukyun's vision tunneled. His scent flooded the corridor, pine and smoke and alpha rage so thick that nearby omegas whimpered and pressed against their partners. Beta stepped back instinctively. Even other alphas lowered their eyes. Then he saw him. Ariam sat on a bench near the Gucci store, paramedics crouched on either side. His turtleneck was torn, exposing the bonding mark on his throat, Sukyun's claiming bite, now surrounded by bruises. His shoulder was bleeding through hastily applied gauze. His wrist was swelling, already purple. But worse than the physical injuries was his scent. Rain and frost and terror, the smell of an omega who'd been dragged back to his worst nightmares. Sukyun crossed the distance in 4 strides. Hyung, Ariam's voice broke on the word, and that small sound, that tiny crack in his mate's composure, nearly shattered Sukyun's restraint entirely. He dropped to his knees in front of Ariam, ignoring the paramedics, ignoring the crowd, ignoring everything except his bonded omega who was hurt and scared and his to protect. Sukyun's hands cupped Ariam's face with desperate gentleness, thumbs brushing away tears that Ariam probably didn't even realize he was crying. I'm here, Sukyun murmured, releasing calming pheromones in waves, deliberate, controlled, everything his omega needed. I'm here now, Jagaya. You're safe. Ariam was trembling, his whole body shaking with delayed shock. Minute-Gayam, I didn't even do anything, I was just walking. I know, baby. Sukyun pressed his forehead to Ariam's, scenting him thoroughly, marking him with reassurance and possession and the promise of protection. You didn't do anything wrong. Nothing was your fault. Do you understand me? Nothing. Ariam nodded against him, fingers clutching at Sukyun's suit jacket like a lifeline. I'm going to handle this now, Sukyun continued, his voice soft but carrying an edge that promised retribution. I'm going to take care of everything. Do you trust me? Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. Good. Sukyun pressed a kiss to Ariam's bonding mark, gentle, reverent, the opposite of the violence he was about to unleash. Then he stood, addressing Jae-sung without taking his eyes off his mate. Get him to the car. Private hospital, Dr. Kim. Full examination. I want documentation of every injury. Sir, Ariam started to protest. Please, Sukyun said, and the raw emotion in that single word stopped any argument. Let me see you safe first. Then I'll end this. The mall security office had become an interrogation room. Minute-Gayam sat in a plastic chair, Yuna beside him, both of them radiating indignant alpha arrogance. They'd been detained for 15 minutes, questioned by mall security, told the police were coming, their IDs photocopied. This is ridiculous, Minute-Gayam announced to the nervous security supervisor. That omega attacked me first. I was defending myself. Do you have any idea who my fiancé's family is? Do you understand the lawsuit you're facing right now? The security supervisor looked like he wanted to crawl under the desk and die. The door opened. Sukyun walked in, flanked by 2 of his security team. He wore a black 3-piece suit that cost more than most people's cars, his hair perfectly styled, his expression absolutely empty. Behind him, the door locked with an ominous click. He sat down in the chair across from Minute Gayam with fluid grace. Crossed one leg over the other. Folded his hands in his lap. Said nothing. Just stared. Minute Gayam stared back, confused and irritated. Who the hell are you? Another security guard? Because if you think. Do you know who I am? Sukyun asked. His voice was conversational. Almost pleasant. Somehow that made it more terrifying. Minute Gayam's arrogance faltered. Should I? Sukyun smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. The penthouse was silent except for the soft hum of the nest room's climate control. Aryam sat in the center of their nest, an elaborate construction of silk sheets, cashmere blankets, and pillows arranged with omega precision. He'd built it higher than usual tonight, the walls of fabric creating a cocoon that felt safe, protected. His shoulder was bandaged, his ribs wrapped, his wrist in a brace. Dr. Kim had been thorough, gentle, and discreet. But the physical injuries weren't what hurt most. Sukyun knelt at the nest's entrance, still wearing his blood-stained suit, waiting for permission to enter. Always waiting for permission, even though this was his home, his nest too. Because Aryam's autonomy mattered more than any alpha instinct. Come in, Aryam whispered, and Sukyun moved into the nest with careful grace, settling beside him but not touching. Not until invited. They sat in silence for long minutes. Sukyun's scent surrounded them, pine and smoke, but softer now, the sharp edges of rage smoothed into something protective and warm. Aryam breathed it in, let it calm his frayed nerves, let it remind him he was safe now. I never told you everything, Aryam finally said, his voice small in the quiet. About before. About him. You don't have to. I do. Aryam's fingers twisted in the silk sheets. You deserve to know. After today, after what he said, you deserve the whole truth. Sukyun waited, patient as stone, while Aryam gathered his courage. My family disowned me when I presented as Omega at 18. Aryam began, the words coming slowly at first, then faster, like lancing a wound. They'd expected Beta. Prayed for Beta. An Omega son was shameful. Unmarketable. My father said I'd embarrass the family name. My mother cried. My older brother, his voice cracked. My brother told me to leave before I infected their reputations. Sukyun's sense spiked with anger, but he stayed silent, letting Aryam speak. So I left. Got a tiny apartment, worked 3 jobs. Then I met Minute Gayam at a coffee shop. He seemed kind. Said he didn't care about my family, about presentations, about any of it. He said he loved me. The word tasted bitter now. He moved in after 2 months. That's when it started, little comments about my friends being bad influences, about my co-workers being too interested in me. By month 6, I'd stopped seeing everyone. It was just him and me. I thought that meant we were serious. Aryam's hands were shaking. Sukyun gently covered them with his own, warm, steady, grounding. Then I got pregnant. 3 years ago. January. Aryam closed his eyes against the memory. I was terrified but also happy. Stupidly happy. Minute Gayam said would make it work. He smiled, Hyung. He actually smiled. How long? Sukyun's voice was rough. 2 months. I was 2 months pregnant when I woke up and he was gone. Aryam's breath hitched. Everything. All of it. My grandmother's inheritance, 50 million she'd left me when she died. She was the only one who still loved me after I presented. The only one. And he stole it. Drained the account. Took her love and turned it into his new life. Sukyun's jaw clenched so hard Aryam heard his teeth grind. The note said, Aryam's voice broke. It said an Omega like me was never going to give him a proper heir anyway. That I shouldn't bother trying to find him. So I didn't. I couldn't. I had no money, no family, no friends. I lived in my car for 6 weeks in winter, Hyung. Until they repossessed it. I was too ashamed to ask for help. Too ashamed to admit I'd been that stupid, that blind. Stop. Sukyun's voice cut through the spiral. You were not stupid. You were victimized. There's a difference. Aryam nodded shakily, continuing. The charity hospital. That's where I went when the bleeding started. Free clinic in Dongdaemun. The doctor was kind, but there wasn't much they could do. I lost the baby on a metal table in a room that smelled like disinfectant. Tears streamed down his face now, unstoppable. They said I could leave after a few hours. But I had nowhere to go. So I just walked. It was snowing. I remember thinking the cold felt appropriate. Felt like what I deserved. Jagaya, Sukyun pulled him close, and Aryam collapsed against his chest, sobbing. You found me 6 hours later. In that alley. I was bleeding again, hypothermic, and I didn't care anymore. I wanted it to end. But it didn't end, Sukyun murmured against his hair. You survived. Because of you. Aryam pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But Hyung, there's something else. Something the doctors told me after we bonded. After they did the full medical workup. Sukyun's hands cupped his face, thumbs brushing away tears. It wasn't just a pregnancy, Aryam whispered, his voice breaking completely. It was our pup. After you bonded me, after they could access my full medical history, they said the pup I lost had been a female. I would have had a daughter, Hyung. And he took her from me before I even knew you existed. Before I knew someone could actually love me. Before I knew. He couldn't finish. Couldn't get the words past the grief that was 3 years old but felt fresh as an open wound. Sukyun's scent exploded, not with rage this time, but with something deeper. Grief. Fury. Vengeance. A daughter, he repeated, his voice deadly soft. We lost a daughter. I'm sorry. No. Sukyun's grip tightened, fierce and protective. You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. Do you understand me? He did this. All of this. Every single part. The Alpha pulled Aryam against his chest, holding him while he shattered, while 3 years of buried grief finally broke free. And in the safety of their nest, surrounded by Sukyun's protective scent, Aryam finally let himself mourn, not just for what Minigayam had stolen, but for the daughter who never got to exist, for the life that should have been. And Sukyun held him through it all, his own tears silent against Aryam's hair, while somewhere deep in his mind, the carefully calculated plan for Minigayam's destruction transformed into something far more personal. This was no longer about justice. This was about a father avenging his daughter. The destruction began at 3:47 a.m., while Minigayam sat in the mall security office drinking terrible coffee and demanding his lawyer for the 14th time. Sukyun made a single phone call. Start. That's all it took. One word, and the machinery of Seoul's underground economy began turning with lethal precision. Phase 1, Professional Death. By dawn, Minigayam's employer, a mid-tier investment firm in Gangnam, received an anonymous email. The subject line read, Financial Discrepancies, Wellington Park, Minigayam. The attachment contained 3 years of meticulously documented embezzlement. Falsified expense reports. Redirected client funds. Shell companies in his name. The evidence was irrefutable because it was real. Sukyun's forensic accountants had simply found what Minigayam had assumed would stay hidden forever. The firm's CEO opened that email at 6:15 a.m. By 6:45 a.m., Minigayam's access cards were deactivated. By 7:30 a.m., the company's legal team was drafting termination papers and preparing to report him to the Financial Services Commission. His work visa, sponsored by that same company, would be revoked within 72 hours. His professional licenses, already under review due to the investigation, were suspended pending criminal charges. Every business contact in his phone received an identical dossier by courier. Elegant black folders containing evidence of fraud, theft, and Omega abuse. Sukyun made sure each package arrived during morning meetings, impossible to ignore. By 10 a.m., Minute Gaim's professional reputation was a smoking crater. Phase 2, Social Annihilation. Yuna's father, a wealthy alpha who ran a shipping conglomerate, received a phone call at his office. "Mr. Kang, this is regarding your daughter's fiancé. I thought you should know what kind of alpha you're welcoming into your family." The voice was polite, respectful, and utterly damning. It explained about the stolen inheritance. The abandoned pregnant Omega. The public assault captured on security cameras. By the time the call ended, Mr. Kang's assistant was already drafting a press release announcing the broken engagement. Yuna herself received the news via text message. "Father says the wedding is cancelled. He says you're lucky he's not disowning you for your poor judgment. Pack Minute Gaim's things. He's not welcome in our home." The mall security footage went viral by noon. 48 hours of careful editing ensuring Ariam's face was pixelated, his identity protected, but Minute Gaim's features crystal clear. The caption read, "American Alpha assaults bonded Omega in luxury mall, trigger warning, violence." Within hours, the video had 2 million views. Within a day, international news outlets picked it up. The narrative was damning. Wealthy foreign alpha brutalizes vulnerable Korean Omega, exposed as fraud and abuser. Minute Gaim's family in Boston, his elderly parents who'd always believed their son was successful and kind, received a package from a concerned friend. Inside, printed transcripts, medical records, Ariam had signed the release forms with shaking hands, photographs of the charity hospital where he'd miscarried alone. His mother called him weeping. His father called him a disgrace. His sister, an Omega herself, called him a monster and said she never wanted to see him again. His social media accounts, still active because he'd been detained without his phone, were flooded. Thousands of comments from Omega rights activists, from assault survivors, from people calling him exactly what he was, an abuser, a thief, a murderer of innocents. Phase 3, Legal Warfare. Sukyun's legal team moved like a surgical strike force. Civil suits filed in 3 jurisdictions: theft of inheritance, 50 million Korean wons plus interest and damages, assault and battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawyers were Seoul's best, the kind who made judges nervous and opposing counsel resign. Criminal charges followed: fraud, domestic violence, violating the Omega Protection Act of 2019, abandonment of a pregnant Omega constituted criminal endangerment, and causing death through negligence, the miscarriage classified legally as involuntary manslaughter under Omega welfare laws. Minute Gaim's bank accounts were frozen within hours. His apartment, a luxury unit in Gangnam purchased with Ariam's stolen money, was seized as proceeds of crime. His car, his watches, his designer clothes, all of it tagged as evidence, all of it gone. By the 48-hour mark, Minute Gaim Wellington Park had nothing. No job, no home, no fiancé, no family support, no money, no reputation. Just a holding cell and a mounting list of charges that could put him in prison for 7 to 10 years. The confrontation. Sukyun returned to the security office at exactly 3:47 a.m., 48 hours to the minute after his first arrival. Minute Gaim looked like he'd aged a decade. Unshaven, disheveled, his expensive suit rumpled and stained. The arrogance had drained away, replaced by hollow-eyed confusion and growing terror. Sukyun sat down across from him for the second time. This time, when he asked, "Do you know who I am?" Minute Gaim's face was ashen. "Jang Sukyun," Minute Gaim whispered. They call you the Sovereign. You own," his voice broke. "You own everything." "Not quite everything," Sukyun corrected pleasantly. "I don't own you. Yet." He leaned forward, his eyes absolutely empty of mercy. "But let me tell you what I do own. Your future. Your freedom. Your ability to ever feel safe again." "I didn't know," Minute Gaim started. "You kicked my bonded Omega." Each word was precisely enunciated, sharp as a blade. "You stole his inheritance, 50 million. His grandmother left him because she was the only person who loved him after his family abandoned him for presenting Omega. You isolated him. You got him pregnant. You abandoned him while he was carrying your pup, causing her death through starvation and stress. Minute Gaim's face went white. Huh? A daughter? Sukyun's voice dropped to something subsonic, something that made Minute Gaim's alpha instinct scream submit. You killed our daughter before I even knew she existed. In my world, Minute Gaim, these crimes carry one sentence. Death. Slow, painful, and permanent. Please. But Ariam asked me not to kill you. Sukyun smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Minute Gaim had ever seen. He has a kinder heart than you deserve. So instead, I'm going to do something worse. I'm going to let you live. Long enough to watch everything you built with his money crumble. Long enough to serve your prison sentence knowing that every person in Seoul, in Korea, in the world, knows exactly what kind of alpha you are. You'll be alive, Minute Gaim. Sukyun stood, buttoning his suit jacket with casual precision. But you'll wish you weren't. Sukyun returned to the penthouse as dawn painted Seoul's skyline in shades of gold and pink. His suit still carried the scent of violence, dominance and alpha rage, the smell of a predator who just decimated his prey. He should have felt satisfied. Victorious. Instead, he just felt tired. And desperate to see his mate. The master bedroom was dark, but he could smell Ariam immediately, jasmine and vanilla, still tinged with the rain scent of distress. The nest had been rebuilt, expanded into something elaborate and architectural. Pillows stacked 3 layers high, blankets woven through the structure like protective walls, silk sheets draped to create a canopy. It was a fortress. A sanctuary. A sign that Ariam was processing trauma and needed to feel safe. Sukyun's heart clenched. He'd destroyed Minute Gaim, had systematically dismantled every aspect of the bastard's life, but he couldn't undo the damage already done. Couldn't erase 3 years of suffering, couldn't bring back the daughter they'd never know. Hyung? Ariam's voice came from within the nest, small and uncertain. Is it done? It's done. Sukyun started removing his clothes, the suit jacket first, then the vest, the tie, each piece carrying the stench of what he'd just done. His finished, Jagaya. He'll never hurt you again. Come here, Ariam whispered. Please. I need to smell you. The real you. Not the sovereign. Just, you. Sukyun stripped down to his undershirt and boxers, leaving the violence behind with his clothes. He approached the nest entrance and waited, always waited, until Ariam's hand reached out to pull him inside. The nest smelled like them, pine and jasmine, smoke and vanilla, their scents so thoroughly mixed that Sukyun could barely tell where he ended and Ariam began. His Omega was curled in the center, wearing one of Sukyun's shirts, his bandaged shoulder visible, his face pale but beautiful in the dim light. Come here, Ariam repeated, and Sukyun crawled to him, gathering his mate into his arms with desperate tenderness. They scented each other for long minutes, Sukyun's face buried in Ariam's neck, breathing in jasmine and vanilla until the smell of violence faded. Ariam's hands running over Sukyun's chest, his shoulders, his arms, touching and smelling and reassuring himself that his alpha was here, was real, was his. I feel guilty, Ariam finally confessed, his voice muffled against Sukyun's chest. For wanting him to suffer. For being glad that you destroyed him. What does that make me? Am I cruel? Broken? No. Sukyun pulled back enough to cup Ariam's face, forcing their eyes to meet. Wanting justice isn't cruel. Wanting the man who killed our daughter to face consequences isn't wrong. You're not broken for being angry, Jagaya. You're strong for surviving. It doesn't feel strong, Ariam whispered, tears spilling over. It feels like I'm drowning. Then let me hold you above water. Sukyun kissed his forehead, his cheeks, the tip of his nose. That's what I'm here for. That's what we do. You hold me when I'm drowning in my work, in the violence, in the weight of everything I control. I hold you when the past tries to drag you under. We survived together. Aryam nodded, his fingers clutching at Sukyun's shirt. I keep thinking about her. Our daughter. What she would have looked like. If she would have had my eyes or your smile. If she would have been fierce like you or gentle like. Like you, Sukyun interrupted firmly. Don't you dare finish that sentence with anything other than gentle like you. You are the strongest person I've ever known, Aryam. You survived things that would have broken alphas twice your size. You are fierce. Just in different ways. They lay in silence, wrapped around each other, while the sun rose over Seoul. Eventually, Aryam spoke again, his voice hesitant. Do you think, someday, we could try again? For a pup. Sukyun's breath caught. You want that? Maybe. Not now. Not yet. I need to heal first, need to not be scared every time I think about pregnancy. But someday? With you. Aryam looked up, his eyes shining with tentative hope. Yes. I want that. Or adoption. Or just, us, if that's all we ever have. As long as we're choosing together. Together, Sukyun agreed, his voice rough with emotion. Always together. Whatever you want, whenever you're ready. There's no rush, Jagaya. We have time. We have the rest of our lives. Aryam smiled, the first real smile Sukyun had seen since the mall, small and fragile but genuine. Kiss me, he requested softly. Please. I need to remember that being touched can feel good. Sukyun kissed him with aching tenderness, pouring 3 years of devotion into the contact. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Aryam tilted his head to expose his bonding mark. Again, he whispered. Mark me again. Make me remember I'm yours. That I'm safe. That I'm loved, Sukyun finished, his voice breaking. You are so desperately, completely loved. He lowered his mouth to the bonding mark, gentle and reverent, his teeth grazing the scar tissue before biting down, not hard enough to break skin, but enough to reaffirm their bond, to flood Aryam's system with endorphins and connection and the biological certainty of being claimed. Aryam cried out, not in pain, but in relief. In release. And then he was sobbing, 3 years of grief finally breaking free in the safety of his alpha's arms, in the sanctuary of their nest, knowing he could shatter completely because Sukyun would hold every piece. They made love slowly, carefully, Sukyun worshipping every inch of Aryam's body until the Omega was crying from joy instead of sorrow. And when they finally slept, curled together in their nest as Seoul woke around them, Aryam dreamed not of the past but of the future, of tiny hands and bright laughter and the family they would build from the ashes of what was stolen. Together. The video hit social media at 2:34 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. 42 seconds of carefully edited security footage, an alpha in an expensive suit shoving an Omega into a crystal display. The Omega falling, glass shattering like ice. The alpha's foot connecting with the Omega's ribs while onlookers gasped in horror. The Omega's face was pixelated for privacy, but Minute Gaim's features were crystal clear, crisp enough to identify, damning enough to destroy. The caption was simple, American Alpha assaults bonded Omega in Seoul Luxury Mall, violence warning. Within an hour, it had 500,000 views. Within 3 hours, 2 million. By evening, it had gone global. The headlines came in waves, each one more devastating than the last. Korea Daily News, American Alpha arrested for assaulting bonded Omega in Gangnam Mall. Witnesses describe brutal, unprovoked attack. Seoul Times, stolen inheritance, how one Alpha destroyed an Omega's life and got away with it, until now. Omega writes weekly, justice for Aryam, the Omega who lost everything and the community fighting back. Investigative journalists, tipped off by anonymous sources with impeccable information, dug into Minute Gaim's background like archaeologists unearthing a crime scene. They found everything. The stolen 50 million Korean won's inheritance. The abandoned pregnant Omega. The charity hospital records. The embezzlement charges. The pattern of financial abuse and manipulation. One enterprising reporter from Hankuri even tracked down the doctor who treated Aryam 3 years ago. Her interview, published with Ariam's written permission, was heartbreaking. He came in bleeding, alone, terrified. No Alpha, no family, no support system. He'd been living in his car. When I told him we couldn't save the pregnancy, he just nodded. Like he'd expected it. Like he thought he deserved it. I've been an OB for 20 years, and I've never forgotten that young man's eyes. I'm glad he survived. I'm glad someone finally made his abuser pay. The article went viral within hours. The public reaction was swift and merciless. Omega rights organizations rallied immediately. The Korean Omega Protection Alliance organized protests outside the courthouse where Minute Gayam was being held. Hundreds of Omegas and their allies carried signs, "Justice for Ariam, protect Omega lives, abusers belong in prison." Social media exploded. Minute Gayam's face was plastered across every platform with labels that would follow him forever: Omega abuser, thief, murderer. A hashtag trended worldwide, #Justice for Ariam. Millions of people, Omegas sharing their own stories of abuse, Alphas denouncing Minute Gayam's actions, Betas expressing outrage, flooded the internet with support for the anonymous victim and condemnation for the perpetrator. Minute Gayam's personal social media accounts, still active because he'd been detained without his phone, became digital pillories. Thousands of comments poured in. "You're a disgrace to Alphas everywhere. I hope you rot in prison. That Omega's Alpha is going to destroy you, and you deserve every second of it. You killed an innocent pup. You're a murderer." Yuna's statement came 3 days after the assault, posted on her family's official website. "I am horrified and disgusted to learn the truth about Minute Gayam Wellington Park. His actions, past and present, represent everything I stand against. Our engagement is terminated, effective immediately. I apologize to the victim for not seeing through this man's deceptions sooner. My family and I stand with all survivors of Alpha abuse." The statement was professional, pointed, and absolutely damning. It confirmed every allegation without technically violating any legal restrictions. Minute Gayam's family in America released their own statement 24 hours later. The Wellington and Park families are devastated to learn of Minute Gayam's criminal actions. "We had no knowledge of his abuse of a vulnerable Omega or his theft of inheritance funds. We do not condone his behavior and consider him no longer part of our family. Our thoughts and prayers are with his victim during this difficult time." His sister added her own post on Instagram, "I'm an Omega. If someone did to me what my brother did to that innocent person, I'd want them in prison forever. He's dead to me." Companies scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. Minute Gayam's former employer released a statement condemning his actions and announcing a 100 million Korean won's donation to Omega abuse prevention programs. Every business he'd worked with followed suit. Donations to charities, public statements supporting Omega rights, anything to scrub away the association. His name became toxic. Unmarketable. A cautionary tale. 1 week after the assault, Minute Gayam sat in a holding cell in Seoul's Central Jail, wearing an orange jumpsuit that reeked of industrial detergent and despair. His lawyer, a public defender, because his assets were frozen and no private attorney would touch this case, sat across from him with a manila folder and an expression of profound exhaustion. "I'll be direct, Mr. Wellington Park," the lawyer said, his tone clinical. "The prosecutor is asking for the maximum sentence. 7 years for the theft and fraud charges, 3 years for the assault, 2 years for Omega endangerment, and they are pushing for involuntary manslaughter charges related to the miscarriage, which carries another 5 years. 17 years. Minute Gayam's voice cracked. That's my entire life. And given the public outcry, the viral video, and the fact that every Omega rights organization in Korea is watching this case." The lawyer closed his folder. "No judge is going to show leniency. You're not getting a plea deal. You're not getting reduced charges. You're going to trial, you're going to be convicted, and you're going to serve close to the maximum." Minute Gayam's face had gone gray. "But I didn't mean, I wasn't trying to." You kicked a bonded Omega in public, Mr. Wellington Park. On camera. After stealing his inheritance and abandoning him while pregnant. The lawyer stood, gathering his papers. What you meant stopped mattering the second that video went viral. I'll do my job, but I need you to understand, you're going to prison. For a very long time. The cell door clanged shut behind him, and Minute Guyam was alone with the consequences of his actions. Finally, utterly, completely alone. 6 months later. The spring morning arrived with cherry blossoms drifting past the penthouse windows like pink snow. Ariam stood in front of the full-length mirror, adjusting his collar, not a turtleneck this time, but an open-necked silk shirt that left his bonding mark completely visible. He studied his reflection and barely recognized the Omega looking back. His face had filled out, the sharp angles of starvation softened into healthy curves. His skin glowed. His hair, which had been dull and lifeless 6 months ago, now shone with proper nutrition and care. He'd gained 8 kilograms. Sukyun tracked it obsessively, celebrated every single gram like a victory. Because it was a victory. But the biggest change wasn't physical. It was the way he stood, shoulders back, chin up, meeting his own eyes in the mirror without flinching. The way his scent had transformed from constant fear rain into something warm and content. Jasmine and vanilla, the smell of an Omega who finally felt safe. You look beautiful, Sukyun murmured from the doorway, and Ariam's smile came easily now, without the hesitation that used to precede every expression of happiness. I look ready, Ariam corrected, turning to face his alpha. Today's the day, Hyung. The sanctuary opens in 2 hours. Sukyun crossed the room and pulled him close, scenting him with the familiar comfort of pine and smoke. Nervous. Terrified, Ariam admitted, but he was smiling. What if no one comes? What if I built this whole thing in? Then we'll wait, Sukyun interrupted gently. And when they're ready, they'll come. Healing doesn't follow a schedule, Jagaya. You know that better than anyone. Ariam did know. The past 6 months had taught him that recovery wasn't linear. Some days he woke up feeling strong and purposeful, other days he couldn't leave the nest. Therapy twice a week with Dr. Yoon, an Omega specialist who understood trauma in ways that textbooks couldn't teach. Support group meetings every Thursday evening, sitting in a circle with other Omegas who'd survived abuse, who understood the specific shame and fear that came with alpha violence. It had been hard. Exhausting. Some sessions left him raw and bleeding emotionally. But he'd done it. Was still doing it. Would probably always be doing it. And somewhere along the way, he'd stopped being the broken Omega from the alley and became someone he actually recognized. Someone he could be proud of. The Phoenix Sanctuary stood in Itaewon, a renovated 4-story building that had once been a hotel. Now it was something better, a comprehensive support center for Omegas escaping financial abuse and alpha exploitation. The restitution money, 50 million recovered from Minute Guyam's seized assets, formed the foundation. Sukyun had matched it 1-for-1, then quietly added another 200 million Korean wons because I can, and because this matters. The result was something extraordinary. First floor, emergency housing. 12 private rooms with ensuite bathrooms, each one designed for comfort and safety. Soft colors, quality bedding, locks on every door that only the occupants controlled. Second floor, medical and therapy services. Examination rooms staffed by Omega-friendly doctors, therapy offices with comfortable couches and tissue boxes always within reach, a pharmacy that provided medications at no cost. Third floor, legal aid and job training. Lawyers who specialized in family law and financial crimes, computer labs for skill development, interview prep services, resume workshops. Fourth floor, childcare and the nest room. A bright daycare center for Omega parents who needed safe supervision while they healed, and a special nest room, temperature-controlled, filled with blankets and pillows, a space where traumatized Omegas could build nests and process their trauma in peace. Every detail had been carefully considered. Every service designed to address a gap that Ariam had experienced personally during his own nightmare. The sign above the entrance read simply, Phoenix Sanctuary. Below it, in smaller letters, rising from the ashes, together. 2 hours before the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Ariam's phone chimed with an email notification. He almost ignored it, probably just another congratulations message from one of the many supporters who donated or volunteered. But something made him check. The sender's name froze him in place. Minute Guyam, Wellington Park. Sent from prison. The subject line read, "Please read this." Ariam stared at the notification, his heart rate spiking, his sense souring slightly with anxiety. Sukyun appeared at his side immediately, alpha instincts sensing distress. "What is it?" "Email. From Minute Guyam." Ariam's voice was steady despite the tremor in his hands. Should I read it?" "That's entirely your choice, Jagaya." Sukyun's hand settled on his lower back, grounding. "Whatever you decide, I support you." Ariam opened the email. "Read the first line." "Ariam, I know I don't deserve your time or your forgiveness, but I'm writing to tell you that I've changed. Prison has given me time to reflect on my actions, and I finally understand the pain I caused you." The rest of the email continued in the same vein, paragraphs of self-pitying apology, claims of transformation, barely veiled requests for Ariam to write back, to acknowledge him, to give him some sign that he'd been forgiven. Ariam read 3 more lines, then stopped. His finger hovered over the delete button. Sukyun watched from the doorway, silent and patient, leaving the choice entirely to him. Not influencing, not pressuring. Just present. Ariam pressed delete. The email vanished. "He doesn't get my energy anymore," Ariam said quietly, pocketing his phone. "Not even my anger. Not even my acknowledgement. He's just nothing. A chapter that's closed. That's all he deserves to be." Sukyun's pride bloomed in his scent, warm and fierce. "That's my Omega." "Your Omega," Ariam agreed, smiling. "Always." The sanctuary's grand opening was packed. Omega rights activists, survivors who'd heard about the center through support networks, donors, volunteers, journalists documenting this new resource. The crowd spilled out onto the sidewalk, everyone waiting for the ribbon cutting. Ariam stood at the entrance, oversized scissors in hand, Sukyun's presence solid and reassuring behind him. His alpha's hand rested possessively on his waist, not controlling, but protective. Supporting. "I'm not good with speeches," Ariam began, his voice carrying over the crowd. "But I want to say this, 6 months ago, I was broken. I thought I'd never heal, never feel safe, never believe I deserved happiness. But I was wrong. Healing is possible. Safety is possible. Happiness is possible. And no one, no alpha, no abuser, no one, gets to take that possibility away from you." He cut the ribbon, and the crowd erupted in applause. The Phoenix Sanctuary opened its doors. 3 months later, Ariam found Sukyun in his office, reviewing quarterly reports with his usual intense focus. He looked up when Ariam entered, his expression softening immediately. "Jagaya, what?" "I'm ready," Ariam interrupted, his heart pounding but his voice steady. "To try again. For a pup. If you still want." Sukyun was across the room in 3 strides, gathering Ariam into his arms with desperate tenderness. "Are you sure? There's no rush, we can wait as long as—" "I'm sure." Ariam pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I've been healing, Hyung. Really healing. And I realized something, Minute Guyam doesn't get to take this from me too. The chance to be a parent, to have a family, to create something beautiful from all this pain. I'm not doing this despite what happened. I'm doing this because I survived it. Because I'm strong enough now. Because we're strong enough." Sukyun's eyes were wet. "Our daughter would be proud of you." "I hope so," Ariam whispered. "I hope she knows we never forgot her. That she mattered. That she always will." They stood in the office, wrapped around each other, while Seoul hummed with life outside the windows. And Ariam realized with sudden, perfect clarity, he was no longer defined by what had been taken from him, but by what he'd built from the ashes. True strength wasn't about never falling. It was about rising again. And having someone who helped you stand.